Hey, Brian from Garage Mahal. Today we are going to be doing an oil change on my T474, and we are going to be using a Viver low profile oil drain pan factor, and we're getting ready to do an oil change, so definitely make sure you put your bucket up in the air, and I'll show you why in a second. We have our oil pan under there getting ready because we're going to be doing a couple things. We're going to be draining the oil, front axle, and the hydraulic fluid. May not get to all of it in this video, but just kind of show you. I hit 50 hours, but if you look outside, we had a little bit of snow, so I ended up having to push this a little bit beyond its hours. So as we pull that up, so 51.9 hours. So we went over just about 2 hours. Not hypercritical, but definitely try to stick around that 50-hour mark. And first things first, your brush guard, you definitely want to move that forward, and it's got two little handles there that you can kind of loosen that up with. Next, you have your hood release, and you want to pop that, and then you are going to raise your hood up. And if you're just watching this video to find out a little bit more about TYM, this is all the components. So that is your battery, your hood latch, which we just did. That's your horn. So there's a lot of room to actually upgrade that horn to something, I don't know, more menacing if you wanted to. That is your air filter. Each radiator, you have one for your hydraulics, one for your motor. They have a separate screen in front that you can pull out and clean. Mine's not too bad considering the area that I'm in, but if you do a lot of hard farm work with it, you will definitely want to pull these trays out and definitely blow them out with some air. And then you have one here, and that's for the motor. And then here on this side you have a bunch of components here. So that is your compressor for the AC. Yes, I have heating and cooling in mine. That is your oil fill. That is your fuel filter line for your diesel. And then back here is your oil filter. And then back there, kind of hard to see, but that is your dipstick for the oil. So we're going to be changing that oil filter, checking our fuel oil levels. It takes 4.5 quarts roughly of the 15W-40. I'm putting that in Shell Rotella, and then obviously that is the TYM genuine oil filter. And to kind of give you a look at this, so people are always wondering why it's TYM specific, and you can kind of see that O-ring is a little bit raised, and it has a little bit of a beveled edge in there. Kind of hard to see, trying to get it as best as I can on camera, but just to kind of give you an idea. When I take the old one off, I am going to measure the threads on here and give you an idea of what that actually is for some alternative oil filter choices. But again, genuine is always a way to go. And then on this side of the TYM engine is your alternator. So it's a little one because there's not a lot of electrical components on this that are electrical, which makes this obviously a great tractor compared to some of the bigger brothers that have all sorts of gadgets and gizmos. And that is your antifreeze coolant level. So it is at the minimum. I've never looked at this while it is warm, so I'm wondering how close to the max that is, but we'll get there eventually. That is your radiator, and then your cap on that. And then again, that's your fan on the inside. And then these are some of your other components that are in there. That is going to be your starter. Your starter solenoid is on there. Then you have your exhaust that runs down. So your exhaust actually shoots out towards the front of your tractor. And then that's basically all the engine components that I can see to point out. And then let's get right into the oil change, which is going to be below there. Oh, front axle service is also due at 50 hours. and your oil fill for that is going to be right there. And then your drain, you have one on either side on that part of the axle, and then on the other side you have one on there, and then I believe there's one in the middle as well, so you can drain that all. And then your oil drain is going to be underneath. We'll get a view from under there. There's actually 2 oil plugs because the body of the tractor runs down the middle, so the oil pan is split to either side, just so you understand why that is why. Okay, getting ready to get underneath the tractor, and I'm going to slide my oil pan catch tray right over these pads, so if I happen to get a little messy, I am able to catch that and absorb that before I get into my garage carpet. Okay, so from underneath, that is your front axle, and that is that other drain plug I was telling you about in the center, and also that is a grease fitting that I have not noticed. That we'll make sure that we grease that up really good. And then up under here, those are the 2 oil drain bolts, which I have the backhoe attachment on, so this whole bar gets kind of like in a way of us getting a clear shot of that. But we are going to see if we can't put the camera up here. Okay, so we're going to get the first one here. Actually, we're going to get the first one, which is kind of like behind the camera, behind the oil pan, and then we'll get the second one flowing, where it's basically a 17mm, and this is the drive shaft that runs in between the oil pan, just to kind of give you an idea of how that works. Okay, so got some paint over it from the factory, so we'll get that going. So that's good. Then we'll get this other side going. And it is a tight fit on a 17. Let's give you an idea. Okay. Just getting some oil off my gloves. Another great thing about these absorbing pads, kind of clean up as you go. So we got a pretty healthy stream of oil coming out. So I'll give you kind of an idea of how that is flowing. And since I did the left-hand side first, and that one is definitely almost done draining. And then we got the right side. And we'll just let that drip for a little bit. And definitely a cool thing about this Weaver drain pan is I can drop the bolts down on top, and I don't have to worry about fishing them out of the oil. And then, like I said, you get a nice smooth stream through the screen into the basin. So that's pretty wild. Okay, so it looks like we are just about done draining. So let's take a peek underneath. And yep, that's about as much oil as we are going to get out of there. A couple more drips. So we are going to put the bolts back in. And just nice and gentle so we don't cross thread anything. Okay, that's about as far as we're going to get by hand on that side. get this one. Okay, so we're gonna torque these to spec. Make sure they're nice and snug. And this one's a little off camera view, but you can get the general idea. And just double check the tightness. Okay, we're good to go. So let's go change the oil filter. Okay, so let's get this oil filter off, and just, yeah, absolutely crushed this oil filter getting it off. So we'll let that drain. And I did not like how that moved, but hopefully when we tighten that new filter on, we'll get that. And just looking at this, make sure there's no dirt where that fastens down, and then we'll just take some oil, put it around the O-ring, and then we'll put this on. Always spill. Put it nice and snug back on. Okay, about hand tight. Put that on one more time. Get a little bit more of a turn, and then we'll clean that up all around there. See, this whole housing moved. Okay, I think it's good. We'll check that for leaks. Okay, so that's nice and on there. And then this is where we fill the oil. So let me reposition the camera. I think you can see that pretty good though. So before we get that, let's get some dirt. Like there's some dirt around there. Give that a shot of WD just to kind of get some more dirt and residue off there. Okay, so that's good. That. Okay, and I'm going to lightly around this bottom edge. Make sure no dirt falls in there. Okay, I think we're good. Click the funnel off so that's nice and clean. We don't put any excess dirt in there. And then again, we're going to use 15W-40. So it says 4.5 quarts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour about 4 in here and then see where that gets us. Give you more of a wide view. Kind of give you how much we've poured in there so far. So we got about another quart to go. About half a quart. think we're almost there. Okay, so we're looking at that line. I don't have it totally level. And that should get us right there. Okay. So we're going to let that drain in there a little bit. Now grab this lipstick from the other side there. It's kind of hard to see where we're exactly at, so let's clean that off completely. Put that back in. I know it's going to take a little bit to go in there. So it's not all the way drained down. So we're going to give this a couple. So it's not all the way drained down. You can see it's not quite halfway yet. Okay, so we'll let that drain in for another minute. And that reading looks like we're about 3/4. Okay, so at this point, we're about 3/4. We're going to take this out, set that down on the oil pan. We're going to put our cap back on. Now we have this off. We're going to really clean really well around. Then we have this off. Clean really well around the O-ring. Threads, make sure that's nice and clean. And what we're going to do is we're going to start it and we're going to let it run real quick, just so we can get the oil pumping up into the motor, into the oil filter, and then we can really get a good idea where our level's at. We'll let that sit for about 10 minutes after we run it, and hopefully it should run a lot smoother and quieter, and we'll be back. Okay, so if you heard what I heard, it got like a lot quieter after probably about like 15-20 seconds with that new oil up and circulating around. So I'm really excited to see how that's going to run once I get the cover down and outside. Kind of loud here in the garage. But anyway, we're going to let that drip down, check for leaks, and then we should be good to go, and we'll get that right up onto the dipstick where it belongs. Okay, so we got the oil cap off, and we're putting the dipstick back in. Let's see what kind of reading we get. It's all the way down, all the way up. So we are not quite halfway. So I'm going to add the rest of the oil in there. Let's see how we get. And we are probably about 3/4, and it calls for 1.05 gallons, basically slightly over 4 quarts in the manual. So we basically added 5 quarts in total, and we are still not right there at the end of the dipstick, but that's fine. We're 3/4. I think that's a safe margin to work with. Good enough in there. That is the oil change for your TYM 474. Make sure that's on there pretty good. And again, I didn't like how this shifted, but I don't think it was enough to make any issues. We'll just keep an eye on it, but other than that, off to the rest of our 50-hour maintenance. So